The Mafia Boss was halfway at his car when a tiny hand reached toward him. Not a weapon, not a threat, just a crumpled $5 bill trembling between the fingers of a little girl. Salvatore Sal Bianchi stopped. The child standing before him looked completely out of place in his world. She wore a bright pink shirt, dark pants, and worn sneakers. Her brown hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and tears were running down her cheeks. But she wasn't running away. She was walking toward him, and that was what made Sal's men move. One stepped forward immediately. Another reached inside his jacket. Sal lifted one hand. Nobody touched her. The men stopped. Sal slowly crouched until he was looking directly into the girl's frightened eyes. She extended the bill toward him. "Please," she whispered. Sal looked at the money, then at her. "What do you want to do with $5? The little girl swallowed. "I want you to save my mommy." For the first time that evening, Sal didn't have an answer. He had been offered fortunes to solve problems. Men had begged him for protection. Criminals had paid him to make enemies disappear. Powerful people had placed briefcases full of cash at his feet. But nobody had ever tried to hire Salvatore Bianchi with $5, especially not a child. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl hesitated. Then she whispered, "Sophia." "Sophia what?" "Morgan." Something changed in Sal's expression. He knew that name, but before he could ask why, Sophia grabbed the sleeve of his black jacket and leaned closer. Her voice dropped until it was barely audible. "My mommy told me that if she ever disappeared, I had to find you." Sal froze. Completely, because there was only one woman who could have given a little girl that instruction. Maria Morgan. And Maria had been missing for 3 days. Sal stared at Sophia. "Where is your mother?" The little girl's face crumpled. "They took her." "Who?" Sophia looked behind her, then toward the street, then back at Sal. Her tiny fingers tightened around his sleeve. "The bad men." Sal's eyes hardened. "What bad men?" "They came to our house." Her voice cracked. "They said Mommy knew something she wasn't supposed to know." Sal slowly stood. His men exchanged glances. This was no longer a child asking a stranger for help. This was something else. Something dangerous. Sophia looked up at him. "They told Mommy that if she talked, they would hurt me too." Sal's jaw tightened. Then Sophia held the $5 bill toward him again. "Please take it." Sal stared at the worn piece of paper. "Where did you get this?" "It's mine." "You need it." Sophia shook her head. "I need Mommy more." That answer landed harder than Sal expected. For 42 years, Salvatore Bianchi had learned how to recognize fear. He knew what it looked like in grown men. He knew what it sounded like when criminals begged. He knew how desperation changed people's voices. But Sophia was different. She wasn't trying to save herself. She was trying to save someone else. And somehow, this little girl had decided that the most dangerous man in the city was the safest person she could find. Sal slowly reached for the $5 bill, but before his fingers closed around it, Sophia whispered one more thing. And this time, Sal's face went completely still. "Mommy said you would know what she meant when I told you about the blue door." Sal stopped breathing for a second, because there was a blue door he hadn't thought about in 15 years. A door connected to a secret he'd buried so deeply that he convinced himself nobody alive remembered it. Apparently, Maria Morgan did. And now Maria was gone. Stay with me until the end, because the truth behind that $5 bill will reveal why Maria trusted a mafia boss with her daughter's life, and why Salvatore Bianchi was about to risk everything he had built to bring her home. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Salvatore Bianchi had spent most of his adult life making people afraid of him. At 42, he didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. He didn't need to threaten people. His name usually did the work for him. Sal controlled businesses, gambling operations, protection routes, and enough territory to make local criminals think twice before crossing the wrong street. His men followed him because they believed one thing above everything else. Sal always knew what he was doing, and Sal had rules. Never trust someone who talks too much. Never let emotion make a business decision. Never make promises unless you're prepared to keep them. And most importantly, never allow children anywhere near his world. Children were complications. They asked questions. They remembered faces. They attracted police attention. And Sal had spent years building an empire by eliminating complications before they became problems. That was why the sight of Sophia Morgan standing beside his car should have annoyed him. Instead, it unsettled him. Because Sophia hadn't approached him like a normal child approaching a stranger. She had walked directly toward him, as though she had been sent there, as though she'd been told exactly where to find him. And as Sal looked down at the $5 bill in his hand, he noticed something that made his expression change. The bill was old and heavily creased. It had been folded into a tiny square and opened again so many times that the paper was beginning to soften along the edges. This wasn't money a child had casually found. Sophia had been saving it, and judging by the way she kept staring at it, it might have been everything she had. Sal looked back at her. "Where's your father?" Sophia's eyes dropped. "He's gone." "When?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, "Last year." Sal's expression remained hard, but his voice became quieter. "So it's just you and your mother?" Sophia nodded. "Was." That single word made Sal's stomach tighten. "Was." He crouched again. "Tell me exactly what happened." Sophia wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Mommy was scared that morning." "Why?" She kept looking outside. "Did she tell you why?" Sophia shook her head. Then she remembered something. "She told me to stay in my room." Sal's eyes narrowed. "What happened next?" "I heard people talking." "Men?" She nodded. "3 men." Sal glanced toward his lieutenant. The man's expression had already changed. 3 men. A mother. A frightened child. A kidnapping. But then Sophia said something that made the entire situation much darker. "They knew Mommy's name." Sal stared at her. Of course they knew her name. "No." Sophia shook her head. "They knew things about her." "What things?" The girl squeezed her hands together. "They said Mommy had something." Sal went silent. What did she have? Sophia didn't know. Or perhaps she was afraid to say. Sal softened his voice. "Sophia, whatever your mother had, you need to tell me." The girl looked directly into his eyes. Then she whispered, "A list." Sal's blood ran cold. A list. Names. Addresses. Payments. People connected to an operation that had been hidden beneath his own territory. Suddenly Maria's disappearance didn't look like a random kidnapping. Someone had taken her because she knew something. And if Maria knew what Sal suspected she knew, then the people who took her weren't simply trying to collect a debt. They were trying to erase evidence. Sophia tugged on his sleeve. "Mr. Bianchi?" Sal looked down. "Yeah. Will you save her?" He looked at the $5 bill again. Then at the little girl standing in front of him. For years, Sal had believed that power meant controlling everything around him. Money, people, territory, fear. But Sophia had just shown him something he'd forgotten. Sometimes power wasn't about controlling what happened. Sometimes it was about having enough courage to do something when you couldn't control the outcome. Sal closed his fingers around the $5 bill. Then he stood. His lieutenant stepped closer. "Boss!" Sal didn't look away from Sophia. "Find Maria Morgan." The lieutenant nodded. "And if we find the men who took her?" Sal finally turned. The warmth disappeared from his face. His old expression returned. Cold, controlled, dangerous. Sophia stood beside Sal, but she no longer looked like the fearless little girl who had walked straight toward him with $5 in her hand. Now that someone was finally listening, the fear she'd been holding inside began to show. Sal crouched in front of her again. "Start from the beginning." Sophia nodded slowly. "It was 3 nights ago." Her tiny fingers twisted together. "Mommy and I were home. We were eating dinner, and she was washing the dishes." Sal watched her carefully. "Then we heard a car outside." "What kind of car?" "I don't know." "Did you see anyone?" Sophia shook her head. "But Mommy did." Her voice became quieter. She looked through the window, and then she stopped. Stopped. She dropped the plate. Sal's eyes narrowed. "What happened after that?" Sophia swallowed. "Mommy told me to go to my room." "Did she tell you why?" She said, "Sophia, don't ask questions. Just go." The little girl looked down. "I didn't want to." Sal said nothing. "I wanted to stay with her. But Mommy got scared." Sophia's voice cracked. She had never looked like that before. Sal felt something tighten in his chest. What happened next? They knocked on the door. Sophia squeezed her eyes shut, as though she could still hear it. 3 times. "Knock, knock, knock." They called Mommy's name. Sal's expression hardened. "Did she answer?" Sophia shook her head. "She told me to hide." "Where?" "In my closet." The girl paused. I could hear them come inside. Sal stared at her. "And your mother?" She kept telling them to leave. Sophia's eyes filled with tears again. Then one of them said they knew about the list. Sal went completely still. The list? The same thing Sophia had mentioned moments earlier. What list? I don't know. Did your mother say anything? Sophia wiped her face. She told them she didn't have it. And did they believe her? Sophia shook her head. No. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Sophia whispered, Mommy came to me before they took her. Sal's voice softened. What did she say? She opened the closet and hugged me. Sophia's face crumpled. She was crying, but she tried not to let me see. Sal looked away for a moment. He had seen men stare down death without blinking. He had watched people beg. He had watched enemies break. But somehow, the thought of a mother hiding her fear from her little daughter disturbed him more than all of it. What did she tell you? Sophia looked back at him. She said, Listen to me, baby. You have to be brave. A tear rolled down her cheek. She told me to stay hidden until they left. And then, Sophia hesitated. Then Mommy said something else. Sal waited. She said, Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper. If I don't come back, find Salvatore Bianchi. Sal's eyes locked onto hers. For the first time, genuine confusion crossed his face. Why would she tell you that? I don't know. Did your mother know me? Sophia nodded. She said your name like she knew you. Sal stood slowly. Maria Morgan. He searched his memory. He had known thousands of people. Business owners. Politicians. Criminals. Informants. But Maria? Why would a woman like her send her daughter to him? Especially knowing exactly what kind of man he was? How long have you been waiting for her? He asked. Sophia stared at the sidewalk. 3 days. Sal's jaw tightened. Where have you been staying? Our apartment. Alone. She nodded. Did you eat? A little. What did you eat? Sophia shrugged. Crackers. Some cereal. Sal stared at her. 3 days. 3 days alone in an apartment, waiting for her mother to walk through the door. Every night. Sophia had probably listened for footsteps. Every car outside might have sounded like Maria coming home. Every knock might have made her heart jump. And every time, she had been disappointed. Sophia looked up at him. I kept thinking she'd come back. Her voice barely survived the sentence. Yesterday, I thought she would come home before dinner. Sal said nothing. Then last night, Sophia's lips trembled. I left the light on for her. That sentence hit him harder than he expected. Salvatore Bianchi had spent years teaching himself not to care. But standing before him was a little girl who had spent 3 nights leaving the light on for a mother who might never walk through the door. Sophia slowly held out the $5 bill again. I don't have anything else. Sal looked at the money, then at her, and for the first time, he wasn't wondering why Maria had sent Sophia to him. He was wondering what kind of monster had made a little girl wait 3 days for her mother to come home. Sophia watched Sal close his fingers around the $5 bill. For a moment, she looked relieved. Then Sal glanced at the money again. Where did you get this? Sophia looked down at her shoes. I saved it. For what? She shrugged. Food. Sometimes. Sal studied the bill. It was worn and folded so many times that the corners had become soft. It wasn't much money, but Sophia had treated it like something valuable. You saved $5, Sal said. And you thought that would be enough to pay me? Sophia nodded. Sal almost smiled. Almost. Do you know who I am? Sophia looked up at him. You're Sal Bianchi. That wasn't what I asked. She hesitated. You're important. One of Sal's eyebrows lifted. Important? Sophia nodded seriously. People are scared of you. His men exchanged quick looks behind him. Sal stared at the little girl. And because people are scared of me, you thought you could hire me? Sophia shook her head. Not hire. Sal waited. Ask. Something about the answer caught him off guard. Sophia looked at the bill in his hand. I don't know how this works. How it works? People like you. Sal's expression changed slightly. Sophia continued before he could respond. I don't know how much you're supposed to pay someone. Sal almost laughed. You're not supposed to pay me. Why? Because I don't work for $5. Sophia's face fell. Sal noticed immediately. She wasn't offended. She looked frightened. Then how much? Sal stared at her. What? How much do I need? Sophia. I can find more. She quickly looked around. I can work. Sal's face hardened. You're 7. I can still work. No. I can clean. No. I can... Sophia. She stopped. Sal lowered his voice. You don't owe me anything. The little girl stared at him as if she didn't understand. Then why did you give me the money? He asked. Sophia looked at the $5 bill. Because I thought that's how it worked. Sal said nothing. My teacher said when you need something, you have to give something back. That doesn't mean you give money to strangers. But you're not a stranger. Sal's eyes narrowed. Why not? Sophia answered without hesitation. Because Mommy knew you. That sentence silenced him. Sal looked away for a moment. He had spent years building walls around himself. People didn't know what he felt. They didn't know what he feared. They certainly didn't know what mattered to him. That was how he'd survived. But this little girl kept walking straight through every wall without even realizing they were there. Sal looked back at her. Why $5? Sophia's lips parted. Because that's all I have. Sal glanced at the bill. That's everything? She nodded. Everything. Her eyes began to water. It's everything I have. Sal didn't move. The words were simple, but they landed somewhere inside him that he had kept locked away for a very long time. He looked at Sophia's worn shoes, her old clothes, the tired face of a child who had spent 3 nights waiting for her mother. Then he looked at the $5 bill again. She wasn't trying to buy a service. She was giving him everything she possessed because she believed he was powerful enough to bring her mother home. Sal slowly crouched in front of her. You really thought $5 could make me save your mother? Sophia nodded. Because you're powerful. Sal stared at her. And if I say no? Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She looked down at her empty hands. Then I don't know what I'm going to do. For the first time, Sal had no cold answer ready. He simply looked at the little girl standing in front of him. Then he closed his hand around the $5 bill. Tell me everything you remember about the man who took your mother. Sal stared at the $5 bill in his hand. Then he looked at Sophia. Tell me everything you remember about the man who took your mother. Sophia opened her mouth, but before she could answer, something inside Sal shifted. Maria. He hadn't thought about her in years. But now the memory came back with startling clarity. It had been a long time ago, before Salvatore Bianchi had become the man everyone feared, before his name carried weight, before people lowered their voices whenever he entered a room. Back then, Sal had been younger, angry, and already learning what the world expected him to become. Maria had been different. She had looked at him without fear. Not once. She had spoken to him like he was an ordinary man. She had asked him how he was doing when everyone else only wanted to know what he could do for them. She had seen something in him that Sal himself had stopped seeing. A human being. Not a monster. Not a mafia boss. Just Sal. And now, years later, she had trusted him with the most precious thing in her life. Her daughter. Sal finally understood. Maria hadn't sent Sophia to him because she believed he was a good man. She had sent her because she believed there was still something good buried inside him. Something worth trusting. Sal looked at Sophia. You're not going back home tonight. Her eyes widened. Why? Because whoever took your mother may know where you live. Sophia immediately shook her head. But Mommy might come back. Sal's expression softened slightly. If she does, I want her to find you somewhere safe. Sophia stared at him. Where am I going? Sal turned toward one of his men. Take her to the house on Bellamy Street. The man nodded. Put 2 people outside. Nobody gets near her unless I authorize it. Sophia looked between them. Are you coming? Sal paused. Yes. When? I have something to do first. Find Mommy? Sal looked into her eyes. There was no fear in Sophia's face now. Only hope. That made the promise harder. Sal nodded. I'm going to find your mother. Sophia looked down at the $5 bill still in his hand. You took my money. Sal glanced at it. Yes. Then you have to do it. For a second, Sal almost smiled. Get somewhere safe, Sophia. She hesitated. Then she allowed a man to lead her toward the waiting vehicle. But before she climbed inside, she turned around. Mr. Bianchi? Sal looked at her. Please don't be too late. The word stayed with him as the vehicle disappeared down the street. Sal stood silently until the car was gone. Then the warmth vanished from his face. He turned toward his men. Several of them immediately straightened. Salvatore Bianchi was back. Find Maria. His lieutenant stepped forward. We'll start with her apartment, then check every location connected to her. Sal nodded. Quietly. I want names, vehicles, phone records, everything. His lieutenant hesitated. And if the people holding her refuse? Sal slowly looked at him. The street seemed to grow quieter. His voice was calm. Almost too calm. Then they made their last mistake. Nobody asked another question. Sal turned toward the city. Somewhere out there, Maria was waiting. And for the first time in years, Sal knew exactly what he was willing to risk to bring someone home. Sal's men found the first clue before midnight. It came from Maria's apartment. The place had already been searched by whoever took her. Drawers had been pulled open, cabinets emptied, and papers scattered across the floor. Whoever had gone through the apartment hadn't been looking for jewelry or cash. They had been looking for information. Sal stood in the middle of the living room while his lieutenant placed a thin folder on the table. "We found this hidden behind the kitchen cabinet." Sal opened it. The first page contained a list of names. The second had addresses. Then came bank account numbers, dates, payments, vehicle descriptions, and notes written in Maria's handwriting. Sal turned another page. His expression changed. "What is this?" His lieutenant leaned over the table. "Looks like Maria had been tracking something." "Something? A criminal operation." Sal continued reading. The more pages he turned, the quieter the room became. Maria hadn't simply stumbled across a few suspicious people. She had been investigating an organization that had been operating beneath Sal's territory for months. They had been moving money through legitimate businesses, using warehouses that appeared empty during the day, moving shipments at night, paying people to look the other way. And somehow they had managed to do it without attracting Sal's attention. That alone was enough to make him angry. But then he saw the numbers. Large payments, repeated transactions, money moving through accounts connected to businesses Sal controlled. Sal's eyes narrowed. Who gave her access to this? "We don't know. Find out." His lieutenant nodded. Sal continued through the documents. Maria had written down names of people involved. Some were strangers. Others were people Sal recognized from the edges of his operation. Drivers, warehouse managers, business owners, men who had been quietly receiving money without his knowledge. Then Sal found something worse. A page filled with handwritten notes. At the top, Maria had written, "People inside Bianchi organization." Sal stopped. His lieutenant looked at him. "Boss." Sal didn't answer. He read the first name, then the second, then the third. Each one belonged to someone connected to his organization. Men he had trusted with his money. Men who knew where his shipments moved. Men who knew which businesses belonged to him and which ones were protected. Sal slowly turned the page. There were more names. His jaw tightened. "This isn't just someone operating in my territory." His lieutenant said nothing. "They've been operating inside it." "Yes." Sal looked up. "How long?" "We're still trying to determine that." Sal dropped the page onto the table. "Maria figured it out." His lieutenant nodded. "And that's why they took her." The room fell silent. Sal stared at the documents. Everything began fitting together. The men who came to Maria's home. The list. The kidnapping. The warning. They hadn't taken Maria because she was unlucky. They took her because she knew too much. And if these documents were real, then someone inside Sal's own organization had helped keep the operation hidden. Maybe someone had even helped arrange Maria's disappearance. Sal's lieutenant slowly picked up another sheet. "There is one more thing." Sal looked at him. "What?" "We found a record of payments." He placed the paper on the table. Sal studied it. The dates stretched back months. Payment after payment. And beside each transaction was a name. Sal read it once. Then again. His breathing slowed. His eyes remained fixed on the page. Because he knew that name. He knew the man. Trusted him. Had given him access to almost everything. Sal's fingers tightened around the paper. For the first time that night, the possibility wasn't just that Maria had been kidnapped. It was that someone inside his own house had opened the door for them. The warehouse sat at the edge of the industrial district, surrounded by abandoned buildings and empty lots. Sal's men had been tracking the location for nearly an hour before they confirmed it. One of the vehicles connected to Maria's disappearance had been spotted outside. Then another. Sal stood across the street, staring at the dark building. "That's the place," his lieutenant said. Sal didn't answer. The warehouse looked abandoned from the outside. Broken windows. Rusted metal doors. No visible signs of activity. But Sal knew better. Where are the exits? 3 that we know of. Front entrance, loading bay, and a rear service door. Guards. 2 outside. We believe there are more inside. Sal glanced toward the building. "Maria? We don't know yet." That was all Sal needed to hear. He looked at his men. Quietly. They moved. 2 men went toward the rear of the building, while another pair approached the loading bay. Sal remained near the front with his lieutenant, waiting for the signal. Then a faint voice came through the earpiece. "Rear entrance secured." A second voice followed. "Loading bay clear." Sal looked at his lieutenant. Go. The doors opened. His men moved inside. Sal followed. The smell hit him first. Dust, oil, cold concrete. The warehouse was much larger than it appeared from outside. Old machinery sat beneath plastic coverings, and stacks of wooden crates lined the walls. But there were signs that people had been living there. Blankets, empty food containers, plastic bottles. Sal stopped. His eyes moved across the floor. Then he saw a small shoe, not Sophia's. His expression changed. Search everything. His men spread through the building. A few seconds later, someone shouted from deeper inside, "Boss!" Sal moved quickly toward the voice. They found a locked metal door. One of his men forced it open. Sal stepped inside and stopped. Maria was sitting against the far wall. Her hands were tied. Her face was pale. There was a bruise near her cheek, and her hair was disheveled. But she was alive. For 1 second, Sal simply stared at her. Maria looked up. Her eyes widened. Sal, he walked toward her. Maria, she stared at him as if she couldn't believe he was standing there. How did you? Where are the men? Maria's expression immediately changed. Sal, you have to leave. No, you don't understand. Where are they? They're still here. Sal looked toward the hallway. How many? I don't know. Maria's voice became urgent. They brought me here because of what I found. They wanted the names, the records, everything. Sal crouched and cut the restraints around her wrists. Did you give them anything? No. Good. Maria grabbed his arm before he could stand. Sal, listen to me. He looked at her. There are other people here. Sal froze. What? I'm not the only one. Maria pointed toward another corridor. They've been keeping people here. Who? I don't know all their names. Her voice shook. Some were workers. Some were witnesses. People who knew about the operation. Anyone who could expose them. Sal's eyes hardened. How many? Maria swallowed. At least 6. Sal looked toward the hallway. His lieutenant appeared behind him. Boss! Sal stood. Check every room. His men moved immediately. Doors began opening one after another. Then came the voices. A man calling for help. A woman crying. Someone begging them not to leave. Sal walked down the corridor. Behind one door, they found 2 men locked inside. Behind another, a woman was sitting on the floor with her wrists bound. Then another room, another victim, and another. These weren't criminals. They were people who had been kept there because someone wanted them silent. Sal looked back at Maria. You knew. I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know who I could trust. That answer struck him. Maria looked toward his men. Now you understand. Sal did. The list hadn't just exposed a criminal operation. It had exposed something much deeper. Someone had built a prison inside his territory and used his own organization to keep it hidden. Sal's lieutenant returned. 6 confirmed. We found 2 more downstairs. Sal's expression hardened. Get them out. His lieutenant nodded. And Maria? Sal looked at her. She's coming with us. Maria shook her head. No. Sal stared at her. There are still people here. He glanced toward the trapped victims. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he turned to his men. Nobody leaves until everyone comes out. Sal's men moved through the warehouse, freeing the remaining prisoners one by one. But Sal wasn't leaving yet. He wanted the people responsible. Maria stood behind him, supported by one of his men. Her face was pale, but her eyes remained fixed on the dark hallway. Then footsteps echoed from somewhere deeper inside. Sal turned. 3 men emerged from the shadows. The man in front was dressed in a dark coat, his expression calm despite the armed men surrounding him. He looked at Sal and smiled. You came yourself. Sal didn't answer. His eyes moved past him. Where are the others? The man shrugged, probably running. Sal's lieutenant stepped forward, but Sal raised his hand. Let him talk. The man smiled again. Maria Morgan caused all of this. Maria stiffened. Sal looked at her. What did she find? The man laughed quietly. You already know. Tell me. She found the accounts, the warehouses, the names. She found out who was moving money through your businesses and who was working beneath you. Sal's expression remained cold. And you kidnapped her because of that? We couldn't let her talk. Maria stared at him. You killed people to keep those records hidden. The man's smile disappeared. You should have stayed out of it. Sal stepped closer. You made a mistake. The man looked amused. Did I? He glanced toward Maria. She was never the real problem. Sal stopped. What does that mean? The man leaned against a metal table. Your organization is full of holes. Bianchi, people you trusted have been working against you for months. Sal's eyes hardened. Who? The man smiled. Now you care. Sal didn't move. Name him. You really think you can threaten me? No. The man's confidence returned. I'm telling you that the person who gave us Maria's location is someone you see every day. Sal's lieutenant looked at him. Maria's face tightened. The man continued. He gave us schedules, addresses, information about your businesses. He told us which people would ask questions and which ones wouldn't. Sal's hands slowly tightened. Who? The man leaned forward. You're going to hate the answer. Then he began mentioning the secrets Sal had spent years protecting. Hidden accounts, illegal shipments, names of people who had worked for him, places where money had been moved. The man thought he was gaining control, but Sal barely reacted, because none of those things mattered anymore. Not tonight. The man finally said, You built your empire by protecting yourself. Now you're going to lose it because of one woman. Sal looked past him toward Maria. Then he thought about Sophia, a little girl standing alone on a sidewalk, $5 trembling in her tiny hand. $5 she believed could buy the only thing she wanted in the world, her mother. Sal looked back at the man. You made one mistake. The man's smile faded. What? You thought this was business. Sal took another step forward. It stopped being business the moment Sophia walked up to me with $5. The man stared at him. Sal's voice became quieter. You should have been afraid when that little girl came looking for me. The man laughed nervously. You're threatening me over a child? No. Sal's eyes hardened. I'm telling you that you don't understand what happened. He glanced toward Maria. For years, I protected money, territory, businesses, reputation. His eyes returned to the man standing before him. Tonight, I'm protecting someone who can't protect herself. The first man reached inside his coat. Sal's lieutenant reacted instantly. A sharp command echoed through the warehouse. The criminals were disarmed before they could make another move. The operation collapsed within minutes. Doors were forced open. Records were seized. The remaining guards surrendered or fled through the rear exits. Sal's men moved through every section of the building until there was nowhere left to hide. Then Sal turned toward Maria. She was still standing there, alive, free. He walked to her. Can you walk? Maria nodded. Sal removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. For a moment, Maria simply stared at him. You came. Sal looked at her. I made your daughter promise. Maria's eyes filled with tears. And Sophia? She's safe. Maria closed her eyes. The relief on her face was immediate. Sal looked around the warehouse one final time. The people who had operated beneath his territory were finished. The prisoners were being taken outside. Maria was alive, and Sophia was waiting. For the first time, Sal didn't care what the rescue had cost him. He only cared about getting Maria home. The drive back to Sophia's apartment was quiet. Maria sat in the back seat beside Sal, wrapped in his jacket. She had barely spoken since leaving the warehouse. Every few minutes, she looked toward him, as if she still couldn't understand why he had come for her. Sal kept his eyes on the road ahead. He had already told her that Sophia was safe. But until Maria saw her daughter with her own eyes, he knew those words wouldn't be enough. When the car finally stopped outside the apartment building, Maria's breathing changed. She's here. Sal nodded. She's waiting. Maria opened the door before the car had fully settled. Sal followed. They climbed the stairs quickly. At the apartment door, Maria stopped. Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle. Sal stood behind her. For 3 days, Sophia had been waiting for that door to open. Maria slowly turned the handle. The door swung inward. Sophia was sitting on the couch. She looked up. For 1 second, she didn't move. Her eyes went straight to Maria. Then her face changed. Mommy? Maria's lips trembled. Sophia. That was all it took. The little girl jumped from the couch and ran. Mommy. Maria dropped to her knees. Sophia crashed into her arms, wrapping both hands around her mother's neck. Maria held her tightly, so tightly that it looked as though she was afraid to let go. I thought you weren't coming back, Sophia sobbed. Maria buried her face in her daughter's hair. I'm here. You were gone so long. I know. I waited for you. I know, baby. I left the light on. Maria pulled back. What? For you. Maria's face broke. She pressed both hands against Sophia's cheeks. Oh, sweetheart. Sophia started crying harder. Maria pulled her close again, and this time Maria cried too. She had held herself together in that warehouse. She had stayed quiet when the men threatened her. She had refused to give them what they wanted. But standing in her own home with her daughter in her arms, all of that strength finally disappeared. For a few moments, nothing else existed. Not the warehouse, not the men, not the secrets, not the danger. Just a mother holding the little girl she thought she might never see again. Then Sophia suddenly pulled away. She turned around and pointed toward the doorway. That's him. Maria looked up. Her eyes landed on Sal. He stood several feet away, his expression unusually quiet. Maria stared at him. Then she slowly stood. Sal! He nodded. Her eyes moved over his face. You found me. Sal glanced toward Sophia. Your daughter hired me. Maria blinked. What? Sophia immediately raised both hands. I pay him $5. For a second, Maria simply stared at her daughter. Then she looked at Sal. Then back at Sophia. $5. Sophia nodded proudly. Everything I had. Maria's lips began to tremble. She covered her mouth. And then, through the tears still shining in her eyes, she laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was tired and broken and full of relief. But it was the first real laugh Sal had heard from her in years. Sophia looked at Sal. See? I told you it would work. Sal glanced at the $5 bill still in his hand. For the first time that night, the corner of his mouth lifted. Maria noticed. Her laughter faded into a soft smile. You actually took her money? Sal looked at Sophia. She insisted. Sophia nodded. I hired him. Maria shook her head, smiling through her tears. Then she looked at Sal again. There was something different in her eyes now. Not fear, not gratitude alone. Something deeper. You kept your promise. Sal's expression became serious. I told her I'd bring you home. Maria looked down at Sophia, then back at him. I don't know how to thank you. Sal glanced at the little girl. You already did. Maria frowned slightly. When? Sal looked at Sophia's small hands. When you taught her to trust me. Sal looked down at the crumpled $5 bill still resting between his fingers. Sophia had already returned to her mother's side, but she kept glancing at him as though she wanted to make sure he wasn't about to disappear. Sal held the bill out. Here. Sophia frowned. What? Your money. She didn't take it. Sal extended his hand farther. You gave me $5. I'm giving it back. Sophia shook her head. I paid you. Sal stared at her. For what? To save Mommy. He glanced toward Maria. Maria was watching them quietly. Sal looked back at Sophia. Your mother is home. You don't need to pay me any more. Sophia folded her arms. I paid you. You have to keep it. Sal almost smiled. You're very stubborn. Mommy says I am. Maria gave Sophia a look. Sophia, the little girl, ignored her. Sal looked at the bill again. It was barely worth anything to him. $5 couldn't buy a meal at most of the places he visited. It couldn't buy one of his suits, fill his car with gas, or cover even a fraction of the money that moved through his businesses. But Sophia had given it to him as if it were a fortune. Sal lowered his hand. Why did you trust me? Sophia looked confused. What? Why me? The question came out quieter than he intended. You could have gone to the police. Sophia shook her head. Mommy told me to find you. That isn't what I'm asking. Sophia looked at him for a moment. Then she glanced toward Maria. Her answer was simple. Because Mommy did. Sal went still. There were men who had begged him for mercy. Men who had sworn their loyalty. Men who had told him they would die for him. None of their words had ever reached him the way those four did. Because Mommy did. Maria hadn't trusted his money. She hadn't trusted his reputation. She hadn't trusted the power behind his name. She had trusted him. The man underneath all of it. The man Sal had spent years trying to bury. Sophia studied his face. Then she asked something that made him even quieter. Are you a bad guy? Maria's expression changed. Sophia, but Sal raised a hand. It's okay. The little girl waited. Sal looked at Maria. She didn't answer for him. She simply stood there, watching. Then he looked back at Sophia. He could have lied. He could have told her that he was good. But Sophia had trusted him with the truth. And somehow, lying to her felt worse than admitting it. Sal's eyes dropped. Maybe I was... Sophia didn't move. Sal looked at the $5 bill again. Then he placed it gently in her small hand. But tonight, I got to be the man your mommy believed I could be. Sophia looked at the bill, then at him. Does that mean you're not bad anymore? Sal's mouth twitched. I didn't say that. She thought about it. Okay. Maria laughed softly. Sal looked at her. For a moment, the three of them simply stood there. Then Sophia folded the $5 bill carefully and placed it inside her pocket. She wasn't going to spend it. She kept it for years. The bill became worn and faded with time, but Sophia never threw it away. And whenever someone asked why she kept an old $5 bill that was barely worth anything anymore, she always gave the same answer. Because it bought something money usually can't. It bought her mother another chance. And somewhere along the way, it reminded a dangerous man that even a hardened heart can still choose to care.